First off, I want to thank the brave men and women who work behind the wall. I want to thank them on a national level because their job goes unrecognized.
How do they try to turn a guard?
Well, correctional officer. Sorry, I apologize. But correctional officer.
How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi, host of Tier Talk. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Look who I got with me. I got my boy Russ. What's up, Russ?
Hey, Anthony. Just sitting here chilling. How you doing?
Good. Getting a little bit of a good partnership here going, right? We've been covering a lot of topics lately. And again, Russ does have a little playlist on my channel. He gives out great advice, everything from search tips to just recently how to make hand sanitizer into alcohol. So thank you, Russ, for everything that you're doing for my channel.
Oh, you bet, man. I'm having a ball doing it.
All right, so basically this is a request that came our way through many people, and we're going to go ahead and discuss it. That's why I'm bringing Russ on my show. Russ is really good when it comes to use of force, and the topic that we're going to discuss today, it's going to be about a body camera footage that shows a correctional officer punching an inmate in the face, and this is actually coming from Kentucky. It's a very graphic video, which we're gonna show you when we come back from our sponsor, and it shows a Metro correction officer assault a handcuffed inmate, and this happened, I believe, in April of 2018. So when we come back from our sponsor, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna read the article, then we're gonna show you the video, and then me and Russ are gonna briefly discuss and just basically give our perspective of what we see in the video. Does that sound cool, Russ?
Absolutely. Ready to chop it up.
All right, again, the show Tier Talks for you brave men and women that work in corrections. So if you haven't, don't forget, subscribe, interact, hit up those community boards that I post up. And don't forget, guys, when you subscribe, hit that bell. That bell's gonna notify you every time I post up a video. I stand by for our sponsor.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it, it's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
Okay, now, Russ, let me go ahead and read this article real quick. Now, again, the article is titled, Body Camera Footage Shows Correctional Officer Punch an Inmate in the Face. All right, so real quick, I'm going to read the article, and then we're going to go ahead and show the video. So a now fired Louisville Metro Correctional Officer punched an inmate in the face as his hands were cuffed behind his back. But this is what the body camera footage shows. Terry Whitehead is a 19-year-old inmate at the Louisville jail. He was seated in a jail cell on April 15th, explaining to officers why they found toilet paper covering his cell window during routine security checks.
Whitehead, what are you doing, man?
What did I do, bro?
I ain't never had a problem out here. Why you gonna spit on us? Sergeants come around. You know how this is. Just take this.
I just had to take this shit, bro. I swear to God.
Whitehead, what are you doing, man? Says an unidentified officer wearing the body camera. I ain't never had a problem out of you. Why you gotta spit on us? Sergeants come around. You know how this is. Whitehead tells the officer he was using the toilet. Officer David Schwartz, who stands inches from the inmate, pulls back his right hand as if to strike him. Whitehead recoils, lowering his torso. I do not give you problems like that, Schwartz, bro, he tells the officer. Schwartz then punches a seated, cuffed Whitehead in the face. He walks out of the cell, eventually slamming the metal cell door into the wall twice before walking down the hall. Now, the incident led to the firing of Schwartz, who was 47, who at the time was a probationary officer. In his termination letter, Corrections Director Mark Bolton wrote the former Marine didn't have the temperament for the job and noted there was property damage from his fit of rage. A second probationary officer, Devin Edwards, 21, was also fired by Bolton. His firing letter noted he failed to report the incident and also cited earlier unprofessional action on social media as a reason for his termination. Both were hired as recruits in September of 2017. Whitehead has filed suit against the two fired officers in the U.S. District Court in Louisville, claiming excessive force, assault, and battery. He was pepper sprayed, handcuffed, and badly beaten according to the suit, which seeks monetary damages for medical bills and pain and suffering, punitive damages, and a jury trial. The suit claims Edwards had allowed Whitehead to put the tissue paper over an opening in his cell door for privacy when using the bathroom, and though Swartz did order Whitehead to take the paper down, Whitehead was using the bathroom and not able to reach the paper according to the suit. The officers and Whitehead got into a verbal argument and minor scuffle, leading an officer to use pepper spray. The officers cuffed Whitehead, hit him, then moved him to a different area and continued to hit him according to the suit. Both defendants have denied the allegations in the lawsuit. Whitehead had contusions, swelling, and he blacked out because of the assault, according to the lawsuit. He was taken to the University of Louisville Hospital on April 25th, more than a week after the incident seen in the video, after he lost consciousness in custody, the suit alleges. Metro Corrections said at the time that Whitehead was cleared by the department's medical staff and didn't appear to have any serious injuries. The two officers were fired on April 24th after Bolton reviewed the body camera footage and found they had violated department's use of force policy. And then this is what they said. What I saw on that video was disturbing and is not reflective of what we expect from our staff, Bolton said at the time. Steve Durham, assistant director of Metro Corrections, said in an interview that Edward was fired because he failed to report the use of force and didn't seek medical attention for the inmate. According to documents filed in the pending civil lawsuit, there's an ongoing FBI investigation of the assault captured on the video. The Louisville Metro Police Department's Public Integrity Unit is also investigating. Louisville attorney Sam Aguilar, who was representing Whitehead in the suit, provided the Courier-Journal with a copy of the body camera footage. Durham said the body camera footage is the extent of the officer's video. This case is not about a defect in policy, he said. The case is about a defect in personality. And one last thing I want to say, another article I just found out, came out I think 2 days ago, says that the mother of Whitehead, which is the inmate, wants to know why charges have not been filed against the officer that hit him. And again, we're looking at this happened in April, and it's already December, so about 8 months later. And that's where we're at now. Criminal charges haven't been filed yet, but both officers have been removed. So let's show you guys the video real quick.
Me too, but then I swear to God.
Whitehead, what are you doing, man?
What did I do, bro?
I ain't never had a problem out here. Why you gonna spit on us? Sergeants come around, you know how this is. Just take the
I just had to take this shit, bro. I swear to God,
just
bro.
take the fucking strings down.
I just need to take this shit.
That's all she was gonna do.
All I need, bro, you know I don't give y'all problems like that, bro. I do not give you problems like that, Schwartz, bro. You know, bro.
All you had to do was take the strings down, dude.
I'll take them down next time, bro. Y'all ain't have no problem with me, bro. I swear to God, bro. You know, second shift, bro. You know, I try my hardest.
Keep your leg down. Keep your leg down.
I try my hardest, you feel me? Cause y'all treat us right, you feel me? On everything.
I give y'all double trace every day and everything.
This ain't right here, though. On my mama.
You need medical?
This ain't, nah, bro. I'm straight. I don't want no medical.
You want decon out your eyes?
I need shit out my eyes, though. Sure. Hey, though. You help y'all, though, bro.
I'll come back and talk to you.
Hey, Em.
Okay, Russ, what are we looking at here?
Okay, you know, first of all, you know, the video really just speaks for itself. In the position that these officers are in, this guy isn't a real threat to him. He's not doing anything that can really.
Well, explain that for a second, Russ. What do you mean he's not a real threat?
Well, at this point, they already have him handcuffed, right? And not only do they have him handcuffed, but he appears to be in control. He's not out of control. They're not having to put him into any sort of submissive hold. So at this point, if anything prior has transgressed, that's all water under the bridge, unfortunately for these guys.
Okay, now I want to mention that, guys. This is why it's tough in the job we do. We cannot take it personal. It's very hard to get hit and spit on and still be able to maintain that sense of control when dealing with the person that did that to you. And again, I would like to believe that's what separates us from them. That's what makes us the professionals, because at the end of the day, we're looking to put the inmate down, control them, and ultimately, at the end of the day, also get them checked by medical and place them safe and secured. In this case here, like Russ said, whatever happened prior It doesn't matter at that point because now the inmate has been secured. And I'm going to tell you something, Russ. When you place those handcuffs on those inmates, game is done.
Yes, it is. I mean, for all intents and purposes, the amount of force that you can use from that point forward is almost always very, very slight. You know,
right now, remember, guys, we escalate force in an effort to bring the force, in an effort to control the suspect. Okay, so we escalate force so we can eventually bring it down. So in this case here, as Russ said, you have the inmate, he is controlled, and now you have that punch that, for me, is the most disturbing part, because also being on the administrative end, I see an inmate that's controlled and handcuffed. And I know for a fact that if you hit an inmate that's handcuffed, it's going to lead to criminal charges.
Yeah, if there's obviously no way that they can justify that. This went beyond excessive force, because excessive insinuates that some sort of force was needed. This goes over the line to what we usually call unnecessary force, and that no force at all was needed. And so that's the big break line. That's why these guys were probably fired so fast. And, you know, I just got to say, man, I don't want to see any of my brothers and sisters out there get fired or be facing what these guys are. The FBI is investigating this. And when you have the FBI investigating, you're looking at you know, oppression of an inmate and or an assault under color of authority. These guys are probably looking at 10 years.
Yeah, easily, because you got the violation of the civil rights, and obviously in today's day and age, that's something you don't want to be involved in. One of the things I mentioned, guys, remember they fired two. Schwartz was the guy that looks like he's being removed for the assault. He's the one that punched the inmate. But Edwards is the one that failed to report it. So we have two things here that are about what we do and the role that we play. And guys, if you ever see an officer, let's talk about Edwards first. If you ever see an officer do something that's unprofessional, and again, in like this case here, that could lead to something criminal, you have an obligation. And that obligation, right off the bat, is to report that incident, but also protect that inmate. What's your thoughts on that, Russ?
Okay, yeah, just bringing it forward from right there, I think that we'd all do better to have in foremost in our minds the oath that we take. And what that oath says is that we're going to uphold the law, basically, and that we're going to uphold the rights of everybody. Guess what? We don't get to pick who the perpetrators are. And so these perpetrators, obviously, you know, I can't say that I like them. I know that probably you don't like them. I know that probably these guys didn't like that guy, but we don't get to pick those people. We have to be able to take and protect their rights, regardless of the way we feel personally. So this was a case of two guys who were on probation, and for whatever reason, they thought that they could get away with this, and they thought that it would be a good idea for whatever reason that was. And, you know, it simply played out wrong for them, and they violated this guy's rights, and now it's turned into something that they never expected it to be. And neither you nor I want this to happen to any of our fellow officers. We want our fellow officers out there to instill a culture where this is not acceptable and where they can function in a professional manner and not have to worry about losing their job.
I like what the director said. We kind of touched on it before about the temperament. I mean, when you're going to be in this job, you have to really know yourself. You have to know your vulnerabilities, because if you don't, trust me, the inmates do, and they're going to push every button that they can. And I'll guarantee you they're going to push the right buttons. And if you don't have control of yourself, then you can't expect to control others. And in my opinion, the gentleman that punched the inmate, Schwartz, had no control of who he was. And unfortunately, as I said, when you have no control of who you are, you cannot be expected to control others.
Oh, absolutely. You know, we tend to function day in and day out in a high stress, high toxic environment. And if we're not consciously every moment policing ourselves and trying to bring that environment into our control, where we're the ones in charge, we're the ones that are being the professional, we're the ones that are bringing the heat down in those situations, then we end up with a culture inside an institution or even a whole department where things go rogue. And when those things go rogue, you might be able to get by for a little while at that level, but sooner or later it's going to come back around and it's going to bite somebody, and people lose their jobs, lose their freedoms. And when the public sees this and they look at it, they're even more shocked than we are, because they don't function inside that toxic environment like we do. So their conscious is really, really, truly shocked. And when the public is against you, you don't get the good things that you need. You don't get that extra pay. You're not going to get that good equipment. You're not going to need that extra training, and you're certainly not going to get any good recognition. And those are the things that we need to move our whole profession ahead. So this is the kind of thing where each and every person either needs to show leadership or followship in following the right people or leading the right people down the right path to where the oath that we've taken and the profession that we've chosen to follow doesn't go down a path like this.
And you know what? You said it best. I want to also touch on this, and it's the comment what you just mentioned is, guys, when we're talking about these issues are meant to also isolate the individuals involved and make sure that we don't get that incident as a way to define what we do. We automatically know right off the bat people are going to use this and say, well, that's what these COs do every day, and just kind of generalize this extreme. And when you work behind the wall, it's frustrating because you know that's not true. You know, most of us are professionals, but unfortunately, this is the only thing the public sees. So in an effort to try to build a balance here, that's another reason why it's very important for us to do something like this, because we need to let the public know that we who are in the field don't support that type of action. And we want people to continue to realize that there are professionals that work in corrections, and that this one incident should not be used to generalize how the other professionals do their job. Correct, Russ?
Absolutely. You know, I want the best possible light to be shown on what I do and who I am. That's the reason that or that's the path I've tried to take throughout my whole career. I'm really proud of what I've done in my career. I'm really proud of what I've accomplished. I'm really proud of being put into one bad situation after another and come out good on the other end, and really, you know, help to the public. You know, I've kept the public more safe, you know, tried to function at a really high level and done all those things as part of, you know, service. And I don't want the public to see one bad apple and assume that the whole bunch of us is completely spoiled.
And you know what's funny? I did a video a while back on that blue code of silence, and people have it wrong as to why that code exists. A lot of people think the code exists to cover corruption, and it doesn't. The code, if it does exist, it exists because people don't want to be social outcasts. So when something like this happens, we need people to support the officer that has to do the right thing and report it. We cannot let that officer stand out there alone. If you do witness an incident and you do what you can to stop that incident from getting out of hand, and if need be, you protect the inmate from, let's say, an officer who's gone rogue, who's going beyond the use of force that's needed, then we need to support you immediately. We cannot leave you alone, because if we fail to support you, then we may have a problem with helping you get the courage you need to do what needs to be done. Because I'll tell you something, I'm not going to allow anybody to take away my career. But in the meantime, I'm also going to help and support others who are looking to do the same as me, who are looking to do the right thing. And sometimes we find ourselves in some damn situations, and it's not any fault of our own, it just happens. But we're still expected to do the right thing. And a lot of people say, well, the right thing sometimes can be very hard to do. And the reason why I disagree with that statement, sometimes the right thing people think becomes hard to do is because there's a personal issue in there. And you can't let that personal issue affect you from doing the right thing, because when you're caught up on that stand and they're asking you questions and they know what the answer is something so simple, and you tell them it's complicated, that you couldn't do this thing, and they know in their mind how simple it was for you to do the right thing, they're going to know right off the bat that this issue, this conflict that you could have resolved or helped, that wasn't what was hard about it. You know what you were supposed to do, but you chose not to do it because of your relationship with that officer who may have gone rogue, or the potential feeling of being an outcast if you were to do the right thing. And that's where I'm telling my officers right now, if there ever is an issue where you have someone that gone rogue and there's an officer that seems to be involved through no fault of their own, and they're getting pressured to do the right thing, we need to support that officer. Because if we don't, it's going to make it that much harder for the right thing to happen. What's your thoughts on that, Russ?
Well, you know, I like to take it and step back even one more frame from that, and just to bat it out there, to let the guys that are the managers, the administrators, the district attorneys, and all of those people know that in order to keep your facilities and your departments from becoming toxic, there has to be a basic backing from those at the top in order to ensure that inmates are held accountable and that both discipline and justice occur for the line staff that have it down there on the bottom. Now, I don't know these guys from Adam. You know, it's possible that they're just two loose, rogue, bad apples. It's also possible that they may have fermented for a while in a bad situation where they weren't being given that backing. Regardless, this does fall on them. But what I'd really like to see much more backing for staff from the top who are being assaulted, spit on, attacked, and going through all these things. Because then you're able to really move things to a whole new professional level where people want to keep that job because they know they're going to be back, and they know that they can come back away from a situation, and that they don't have to control the inmate population through fear and intimidation. They can do it through professional pressure and professional discipline and professional justice through charges being leveled or what have you. And so that's the picture I like to look at, and that's what I like to say to some of the administrators and the higher level who really need to look at and assess whether they're giving their officers the correct amount of backing. So, and I'm not cutting these guys any slack, don't get me wrong, but I'm saying that if we want to look at it from a big picture and we want to solve the thing, we do need to look at that aspect as well.
Yeah, you know, I actually want to compliment that as well. I think that's sort of the issues that you see in Rikers Island too, where you feel the officers are taking measures into their own hands because they're not being backed. And there is a level, believe it or not, in the prison system. I don't know if people are familiar with this, but we can't allow ourselves to get walked on. So if we feel that laws are not being passed to protect us, we may feel the need to take measures into our own hands. And again, I'm not saying it's the right thing, but you have to see it from our perspective. When those laws aren't passed to protect our officers, the inmates become enabled. So there has to be a balance, and unfortunately the balance is going to come from people on that front line that says, if you're not going to protect us, then we're going to protect ourselves, and you're not going to like the way we do it. So we have to look at that. We have to even ask, hey, why did it get that far? And again, I don't want to go too far off topic, but I felt what Russ mentioned definitely needed a little bit of wanted to compliment that a little bit more, because I agree with you 100%. We've touched on that before. But again, I like what Russ also said. I'm not condoning those actions. We're not saying those are the right things to do, but you're like an animal trapped in the corner. You know, I got nowhere to go. So either I'm going to just take the beating, or I'm going to start biting back myself. And I think that's kind of where we're at. And that's not just at that one facility, that's nationally. But again, we don't hear that in the news. But again, I don't want to get too far off topic because I don't want to minimize what we just saw on the video. I want public to know right now that me and Russ, we don't condone that. It's not how we worked our careers. It's not how we, expect others to be when we're working around them. And again, I wanted us to also make note that sometimes it's hard for those officers to do the right thing. And that's why I want to make sure that we get the other officers knowing that they're going to need our support so we can get that type of rogue officer out there, because that rogue officer could cost you your job.
Absolutely. And, another thing that I'd just like to point out, especially to my peers, at the level I was at and to the line officers, leadership can exist at all levels. It's not a matter of just necessarily leading from the top. You can have some fantastic officers out there that sergeants and lieutenants will even look to. I want more officers out there to be taking that lead role and to be pointing this out and say, no, guys, this is not the way we're going to function. This is not the way we're going to manage our units, because we can't afford to. We're going to lose our freedom. We're going to lose our jobs. We're going to lose everything that we've worked so hard for. And the main thing that we don't want to lose is we don't want to lose what little status that we have in the eyes of the public. I want our status in the eyes of the public to grow. That's why I do this with you.
Right. And you know what, Russ? I want to also look at this from a higher level now. And then, as I said, we could start bringing it to a close. But there's some other things we still have to mention here. And I've done a video on this before when we talked about staff assaults. From the higher level, right, we have to look at what we can do that brings balance. What protects the officers? What protects the inmates? Anytime that there's a staff assault, and again, Russ made it clear in a comment a while ago that this is if we worked with the ideal conditions. Do we have the right amount of people to do what needs to be done effectively and correctly? So I'm going to talk about the ideal way it needs to be done. Unfortunately, with lack of staffing, you never know where these facilities stand. But ideally, this is how it's supposed to be done. If an inmate assaults a staff member, the staff members that are involved in that code must be relieved immediately, and the escort or whatever else dealing with that inmate has to be a fresh set of individuals, because one thing is again, we want to give the staff who was just assaulted, we want to give them a chance to cool down. We want to give them a chance, because that takes a lot. That's why this job isn't for everyone. Russ made it clear at the beginning of the show. This job isn't for everyone. You're going to get spit on. You're going to get people that just are going to know how to push your buttons. But we as management have to find a way, because we are human, to protect those officers, to protect those supervisors. So again, some of the policies that are put in play to kind of balance it out. But Russ said in a comment before, can we commit to those policies if we don't have the proper tools or the proper resources? Again, I'm talking about, in this case here, staff. But I just want to touch on something, and I'll have Russ, because Russ has been a supervisor, so he'll be aware of this. I'm going to show you the liability end. So one thing is, I get a fresh team on them. Again, that's just, again, an effort to protect staff from taking it a step forward. And also, I got to protect that inmate, and I'm looking at it from an objective level. I also want cameras on that individual at all times, and I also want it to be a supervisor contact. Okay, so if we're dealing with that inmate at any time, including that escort, I want the cameras on them, and I want supervisor at all times. But guess where I'm going with that escort? That inmate's not going right to lock after they assault the staff member. You know what staff has to do, guys? Staff has to take that inmate to medical to get evaluated, to make sure that inmate's okay. And administration is also now going to worry about their staff as well. What staff do we have injured? what inmate, how badly injured is the inmate. The administration is supposed to make sure that all parties are good. But people don't realize that after a staff assault, we're bringing that inmate directly to medical. The reason why I would have the camera is because I don't want the inmate to make any false allegations on my staff. So the cameras, the body cams, believe it or not, can protect us. They can protect us because they're showing the escort from point A to point B. But again, this is where the lawsuits happen, guys, because the lawyers jump on these staff assaults because they automatically expect that when an inmate attacks a staff, because don't forget, guys, we're held to a higher standard, that we are going to rip that inmate apart. And what they don't realize is that the professionals that do their job, they're using the force that's needed to control the inmate. And then there's a little bit of a maneuver on our end to give the people that were directly involved a chance to breathe and cool down, which is normal. That's normal for anyone. If you just got spit on or you just got punched in the face, you try not to take that personal. So we protect our staff, if there's enough people, to go ahead and remove that officer or that supervisor from that inmate so they can cool down, and the ones that weren't directly involved, again, they can go ahead and do that move as peaceful as possible directly to medical. And everything gets documented. What's your thoughts on that, Russ?
Yeah, there's a lot of people around that probably don't realize just the level of documentation and so forth that we have to meet. It's always a trip to medical. Every little wound, every little boo-boo that the inmate has gets documented, and many times, depending on whether or not you have access to a camera, or whether there's been a staff assault, or if there's been an allegation by the inmate, or if there's been a head injury, that camera automatically comes out. And so right from that point there, the camera sees most of what the injuries are. And if he suddenly ends up with some other mysterious injury and stuff, you just can't get away with that kind of thing in this day and age, nor should you be trying to get away with it. What you should be doing is you should be doing your best to uphold both the law and upholding your oath and trying to function in that toxic environment the best you can, to have a long, healthy career, and then to get out and retire like I did.
Right. And guys, in order for us to have a channel like this, in order for us to continue what we're doing, because I'm still on the job, Russ just retired, but he's been involved with me prior to that, is we have to tell people what's expected, not what we would like to do. So again, touching on that, again, just want to let people know that there is that professional escort. The inmate is going to be taken care of. The inmate's going to be taken over to medical. Sometimes, obviously, you'll have the investigation. There should be an immediate need to transfer that inmate out of that facility. So again, it will probably be a camera escort until you can get the inmate transported out of that facility. But until that inmate's transported out of that facility, any move with that inmate who's involved in a staff assault has to be camera move, supervisor escort only. And again, it can't be with anybody that was involved in that assault. That's the best way we can do it. And guys, I want people to realize that's not just to protect the inmate. People have to realize that's also to protect staff from potential bogus lawsuits that the inmate may try to claim later on. When they go to claim that later on, here goes all the tapes that are needed. And guess who's going to come to the side of staff now? The Attorney General. Let the inmate go and sue you now, but you were performing your duty. You did nothing wrong. They review the videos. They'll back you. And that's administration helping out with that, because administration is making sure all things are documented. Sometimes people look at it from the other perspective, but that's not the case. Ultimately, it's to limit the liability, to prevent the lawsuits. But then again, we want to make an effort to protect staff and the inmate. That's from the higher perspective. So I'm just giving you guys the higher perspective. Now, I know we may have our personal biases, but I want people to realize, and again, how I always try to tell people, don't generalize the extreme. If you have an issue, let's say with your administration, don't generalize that to other administration, because there are a lot of people out there that are trying to build better bridges between administration and the front line. I'm one of them. Russ is one of them from down up. I'm coming from up down. But the thing is, there are people out there, and the last thing I want us to do is to try to generalize that. Like, I don't want to say, well, administration everywhere just sucks. That's not the case. I met a lot of good people wearing those shirts and that come from the ground up, and they know how it is, and they're behind the scenes fighting. But they're maneuvering. It's not as easy as people think it is. There's a lot of politics in play. And again, it could limit what someone wants to do. But again, it's good for us to be on a show like this because we're giving you all perspectives in an effort to build that understanding and that middle road, that effort to kind of bring us together as one so we can move forward as one. I want to touch on one more thing, and I'm going to give this to Russ before we close. I want to talk about the training, Russ. You mentioned that when we were on the phone. What is it about the training that when you watch this video, you see what this officer Schwartz did? Why is it that training came to your mind first?
Well, you know, a lot of what happens with training, and both of these guys, they probably had, I don't know, from my count, less than a year in. They're in a situation where they're confronting this individual over what appears to me to just have been blocking the window and stuff. And yeah, we got to get that stuff down because we don't know if that inmate's hurting himself. We don't know if he's sharpening up a weapon and that kind of thing. But the part where they're talking about him spitting on them, that sounds to me like it was figurative spitting because they couldn't be doing their count right then. So then they were turned loose with just putting him in handcuffs and then deciding to punch him. And so where is their training in all this? Why is it that they think that this is the proper procedure to follow? And so that's the part that I just don't get. And I wonder if they weren't left hanging a little bit by not having an FTO there with them, showing them what to do and what they should have been doing. They appear to just be functioning on their own. So that's why, to me, I'm really questioning what level of training that they did have.
Right, these are probationary officers, correct?
Yes, who may or may not have, I don't know what their policy is, may not have even attended an academy. I don't know. I wasn't able to find out that information.
And guys, by the way, some people may not realize this from the outside. There are some agencies where the officers work first, waiting for an opening in the academy, which I'm not a big fan of. I've done videos on that before. But yeah, obviously their level of training, I would love to know that. And again, it's not to, put an attack on those that do the training. There's sometimes we just train people and they just don't take it in, or they just don't want to take it in. They just have their own way of doing things, which again, in this world, if you're not listening to those with experience, and again, still balancing what you're learning, but if you're not listening to those with experience on how to do the job, people that walk the walk, you're going to be a threat, because at the end of the day, the people that walk the walk, they know how to do it. And if you're going to sit there and ignore what they're trying to push out to you, you're not only going to get yourself hurt, you're going to get other people hurt. And I think that's part of what this is about. So again, in closing, I just want to mention something. I'll give it back to Russ for his closing thought. There's a couple of things I'm getting from this, and maybe this can help. Maybe Russ can complement my thought as well. We don't condone this action. We're watching a video with Mike the Cop. Obviously, Mike the Cop doesn't condone the action as well. And then we started getting hit-ups on our end is to, can't you do a video on this? And they're right. We should do a video on this. I want people to know that we don't condone this. What I want to get out of this video, though, and what I want to tell people, and I'll kind of lean towards Russ with the use of force, I want to talk about the guy that didn't report it. Now, again, he had his reasons. But just in general, for those officers that see something that's unprofessional, don't be afraid to do the right thing. Please. Don't be afraid to step up. And for those that do step up, we need to support them. Because if we leave them alone out there, at the end of the day, we're going to put our facility at risk, and we're ultimately going to be putting our jobs at risk. And all I want is to do my 25 and out. And I'm not willing to lose my job and lose everything I have because someone took something too personal. What's your thoughts, Russ?
I just really want to talk to the line staff out there and make them realize that this is the reason why you hang together so tightly, is so that you can control the environment and that you're in, so that this is unacceptable and you can avoid these things. Because the last thing that I want to do is see this sort of thing cost someone their job. Man, I'll tell you what, I am on line staff's side. I'm down there pulling for you, rooting for you, trying to give the best training, the best thoughts, the best that I've got up here, so that somewhere down the line it's going to save your ass. And so, you know, there might some be out there right now that that might be saying, oh, you know, this is the hug a thug mentality and stuff. It's not. I'll tell you what, there are people out there that've been with me in the trenches that know. And so I want to pass this on. I want to save people's jobs. I want to take corrections to the next level. I want the public to recognize and love what we do.
And that's the key. And guys, in a couple of days, me and Russ, and I'm going to try to get Gary York on this as well. Maybe if I can get lucky, I can get Gary Cornelius and Keith Helwig. We're going to kind of have like 5 of us, but definitely I want to try to get 3 of us. We're going to touch on a very controversial topic, and it's going to be, if in an effort to save an inmate's life or in an effort to save an officer's life, someone from staff violates policy, what do? Don't give away anything, Russ, because this went pretty good on because this went pretty good on my Facebook page. It turned out to be pretty controversial because there's obviously people think it's either yes or no, and there's not. There's a lot of middle ground here, but it has happened, especially if you're in a supervisory position. You may come into that position where you may have to write up somebody for doing the right thing or what's perceived as doing the right thing. And I think this is going to be a great dialogue that we're going to have in the very near future. Within maybe a couple of days, we'll get it going. But in the meantime, I thought this was great. We gave our opinion, multiple levels, guys. We gave our opinion from frontline, from higher up. And again, it's just an effort to learn, just an effort to get a good understanding of the situation. I'm sure there's officers out there that feel what we're saying because maybe they went through it or they know someone who has. So maybe we shouldn't be afraid to have shows like this because we're professionals. And the reason, guys, everybody thinks that these topics that we talk about sometimes could be controversial. It only becomes controversial if we're not willing to listen to both sides. And that means we have to listen respectfully. If we listen respectfully, we'll find that middle ground. But we don't have to argue over it. We can be professional, and that's the key. That's, again, a great reason why we have this channel and a great reason why we have experts like Russ and Keith and Gary York and Gary Cornelius, people that come on the show that are really painting a great picture for corrections. And when we paint this great picture, you guys get to hold your head up high and wear that badge proudly because you guys are heroes. You guys should be more recognized than you are, and that's always been my mission since day one. That's been Russ's mission. And we're not going to give up until that happens. Right, Russ?
Absolutely.
I love you, Russ. I'm going to start getting ready to edit this, and I think another great show, correct?
Correct. And let me give a quick shout out to Officer Moon, who put a little blurb on what I wrote out on Mike the Cop's thing there talking about this. He said he wanted to see this on Tier Talk, and that was about an hour ago, and it's on right now. So. Okay,
so here's what we're going to do. Once I get it edited, I'm going to send you the link, and then you put that right in the comment.
That's exactly what I'm going to do.
And tell Moon that's for him. All right, guys, as always, the show is Tier Talk. Please, if you haven't subscribed, don't forget, guys, you got to comment, interact with this community. I'm working on probably getting those comments back up soon. You got to understand, kind of trying to make sure those comments are at least as good as possible. I'm trying to get rid of the negative. And again, when I say negative, the ones that are looking just to insult and not do anything constructive. But eventually, I'll be putting those comments back up because we got to get that dialogue going again. I'm missing it. I really am. I'm jonesing for that conversation again. And as always, guys, stay safe. Love you guys. Take care, Russ.
All right, stay safe, everyone.